I'm going to try to stray away from digital because I love physical media, but the DC Universe app would be a great way to keep up with the podcast. In today's episode, we'll be covering Adventure Comics 120, Aquaman Goes to College. Links will be in the podcast notes. This issue was released on September 1st, 1947. Let's take a look back at what else was happening that day in history. September 1st was Labor Day. Harry S. Truman was president and Clement Attlee was the UK Prime Minister. And if you're playing with toys as a kid, you'll likely be playing with Tonka trucks and dime store soldiers. That's a taste of what the world was like when Adventure Comics 120 was released. I'm reading this thanks to Aquaman: A Celebration of 75 Years, but it's also available to read in Aquaman: 80 Years of the King of the Seven Seas, the deluxe edition. As of recording, this issue is not available on the DC Universe Infinite app, so I'm using the leagueofcomicgeeks.com for release information. Just like our last two episodes based on More Fun Comics issues, today we're starting to cover stories in Adventure Comics, wherein the story was originally part of an anthology of stories. This was one of 5 stories, and Aquaman's was the second. A great leap from the first comic where he was dead last. Again, it's called Aquaman Goes to College. Just like our last episode, Aquaman's gloves are yellow, but unlike More Fun Comics 89, wherein the fins of his calves were also yellow, here they're green. I don't know if that's intentional, but you don't see the fins that often, or even close up, so it might have been an oversight. The issue was written by Joseph Samixon, penciled and inked by Louis Kazanov. The cover of the issue focuses on Superboy, so we'll focus on the first panel of the Aquaman story. Aquaman's name is written in green this time, much different from the red and orange red from the previous issues we've covered. We're set in a college dorm room where a giant blue octopus is putting up school posters. Aquaman's sitting in a bathtub, fully clothed, with a skull cap on, reading a book. In the middle of the room, no less, which I guess from Aquaman could be seen as normal, a student and another man have opened the door and are surprised by what they see. The text says there are many queer creatures in the sea and not even Aquaman knows them all. So he sets out to learn more about them by going to school in this fish out of water story. See what I did there? Since this comic isn't on the DC Universe Infinite app, I can't read you guys the About This Comic section. After the break, we'll summarize the issue.
Is Aquaman finished? Can you make it to the bathroom before we return with part 2 of the show?
What it do, guys? Manjoume here, and if you like board games, especially deck building games, you should check out @Team_Thunder on YouTube. There we have unboxings and games of Legendary, a Marvel deck building game, the DC deck building game, the Transformers deck building game, and many more. That's where you can find VODs of this and Dawn of Pod, where you can directly leave a comment and we can discuss the issues.
The Superman Aquaman Hour of Adventure, featuring Aquaman, King of the Seven Seas, and your favorite comic book superheroes in their own adventure stories. It's 60 minutes of thrills and fun, next on most of these stations.
We start this issue with the narrator setting the scene with Aquaman telling his aquatic friends that he'll be leaving the ocean for a while. There's a bunch of different marine life, but my favorite is this catfish who looks distraught from the news. Without any of them being seen asking, he tells them that he met a fish that he'd never seen before the other day. He swam up to the fish he hadn't met and made contact with the spines, which caused burning to his arm, through his gloves and suit. Turns out it was poisonous and he got sick for days. This makes Aquaman realize the ocean is too big to learn about from just personal experience, so he decides to go to college to study fish and bids his friends farewell. He somehow enrolls in Weston College, disguises himself in blue jeans, a red turtleneck sweater, a skull cap, hat, and glasses. His incognito name is Mr. Waterman. At that point, why even bother? I mean, really? Waterman? Come on. He picks Weston College, despite it being a small school, because it has the best ichthyologist in the country. I'll add that at the bottom of the panel, it tells us that means expert on fish. The next few panels are a montage of studying, going to class, reading books, looking through a telescope, college things. Possibly later on that same day, Aquaman, in his normal super clothing, climbs into the school's water tower and swims around in it. The way he puts it, it seems like he can't go too long without water, like swimming in it. He even notes that he doesn't see how mortals can bear living out of the water. Feels weird to hear Aquaman call other people mortals. So far, he doesn't feel like a demigod yet. I mean, he got knocked out before. He almost died in another one, and he hasn't done too many crazy feats outside of talking to fish so far. Another day, Mr. Waterman overhears a conversation between Professor Hatcher, the best fish expert in the country, and Mr. Reed, a Weston alumni. Mr. Reed complains how the team never wins and threatens if Weston doesn't win the swimming meet, he'll stop financing the school. The professor protests, saying they barely have enough to make ends meet, and without his help, they'll have to shut down the school. Luckily for him, Mr. Waterman is there and interjects that they do have such a good team and will win the swim meet. Mr. Reed doesn't believe him, saying that they don't have a chance in a million. And to show how little faith he has in them, he says he'll give them $1 million if they win and not a cent if they lose. The professor is distraught, but Mr. Waterman tells him not to worry and that they'll win. Fast forward to the day of the meet, Mr. Waterman approaches the coach, and you can tell he's the coach because he's wearing a green sweater that says Coach, as they are off to wear. Mr. Waterman says he wants to join, and even though it's the day of, the coach lets him try out. Mr. Waterman impresses with his dive and ability to stay underwater for 15 minutes. He comes up and for some reason drops the secret identity, and here's where we get our quote of the issue.
Do it again!
Aquaman tells him, "The explanation is simple, coach. You see, I'm Aquaman, but I'm a bona fide student, so I'm eligible for the team." I don't see why he had to tell him who he was. I mean, really, he just had to be good enough to impress the coach and get a spot on the team. Then just do good enough to win. We didn't really need to do a whole reveal, not that Mr. Waterman was a standout secret identity, or I guess a really good covert secret identity. Later at the swim meet, Aquaman, as you can probably imagine, is destroying the other team. He's nearly at the finish line and they've yet to turn around. Meanwhile, a yacht, the Rosebud, has sprung a leak. This just so happens to be the boat of Mr. Reed, who notes he didn't put Weston in his will. So if he dies at sea, they won't get any money. He and sailors get onto a lifeboat, abandoning the Rosebud. Aquaman is just yucking it up, doing crazy, flipping dives, backwards, the whole 9 yards. Even does the backstroke to show off how much better he is. As this is happening though, Mr. Reed's lifeboat hits some harsh waters, throwing some sailors overboard. In his fright, he calls out for help. "I'll give $1 million too. $2 million for any man who saves me." Too bad for him, one man who can help him is miles away, easily winning the swim meet. Suddenly from the drainage, an eel pops up saying SOS to Aquaman. Turns out he was really sandbagging because he dashes through the river and makes it miles in a time frame of soon. Realizing there's too many people for him to carry, Aquaman calls his octopus friend, Octi, to save Mr. Reed and 2 sailors while Aquaman carried 2 himself. Shortly after, we see Aquaman and all 5 saved men on top of a whale coming to shore. Aquaman reminds Mr. Reed his promise, and Reed tells him the thrill of the rescue was worth every cent he owns. Shortly, and there's seriously 2 panels in a row that say shortly at the top corner, we're at a press conference with Mr. Reed, Professor Hatcher, a nurse, and of course, Aquaman. Mr. Reed gives $1 million to Weston College and $9 million to charity. The nurses gleefully tell him he's so generous, while in Aquaman's head he thinks, with a little assist from me he is, but oh well, it's for a good cause. Unlike more fun comics, this one doesn't give a little blurb at the end or preview the next issue. After the break, we'll go over some thoughts and feelings about the issue.
Wait a minute. That was no joke. Somebody tried to kill me. That or we're not paying Mr. Slippery enough. Holy Neptune's trident. This has to be the work of the Legion of Doom. Hey, there's an echo inside my head. Echo. Echo. Echo.
You okay, Aquaman?
Echo. Echo. What? Oh, no problem.
This is the first one where Aquaman isn't captured or tricked. It's super campy of him to attend a college to learn about fish, and even revealing his weak secret identity was really funny. Mr. Reed was lucky that eel was around to hear that they're in trouble. Otherwise, Aquaman wouldn't even have known. Done all that showboating for nothing after finding out that Mr. Reed was lost at sea. A lot of these early issues will have funny concepts like this one. Definitely don't expect the Dark Knight Returns from these Golden Age issues, or even the Silver Age. That said, I'm all here for it, and it is great. In fact, I wish Aquaman would have gotten some turtles like in the last issue and saved the people by everyone surfing on turtles. I can't wait to see what other antics he'll get into. What do you think? Did you read the comic? Let's continue the discussion on social media and the YouTube VOD. You can find me at ManjoumeThunder on Twitter and at Team_Thunder on YouTube. If you're looking for another podcast to listen to and want a broader look at DC Comics, check out Dawn of Pod, a Dawn of DC podcast on Spotify and anywhere you can find podcasts. Manjoume out.
Whew, man. Glad that stopped before things got worse.